Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Sarah Wong. Our top stories tonight. Hong Kong anxiously awaits test result for cargo pilot who may have spread the Omicron variant into the community. Top government officials go all out to drum up support for Sunday's Legislative Council polls. There are fears that the Omicron variant has breached Hong Kong's line of defense against COVID. A Cathay Pacific pilot suspected of catching the variant tested positive while serving home quarantine. Around 160 neighbors returned negative tests overnight, but experts warn that the scare is far from over. Isaac Lee with the details.
As soon as the lockdown was lifted at 7 a.m., residents of Cheung Hing Building left home for work. But to be released, they must produce a certificate showing they had tested negative for COVID. None of the 160 residents of the Yau Ma Tei building who were tested overnight returned a positive result. But as an extra precaution, cleaners were sent to disinfect nearby streets. It was business as usual for shops and eateries in the busy area, except for this congee and noodle restaurant. That's because it has served the COVID patients who authorities fear may have caught the Omicron variant. The patient is a 36-year-old Cathay Pacific cargo pilot who returned to Hong Kong on Monday following a weekend duty call to the United States. He was declared COVID-free upon arrival, but a subsequent test on Wednesday discovered that he was infected with the N501Y strain. A detailed lab test of his gene sample revealed a mutation known as T478K, which is linked to Omicron. Authorities are now conducting whole genome sequencing to verify their findings. In an interview with iCable News, respiratory disease expert Leung Chi-Chiu said if the man does have Omicron, there's a good chance the variant has entered the community. The coming 14 days will be crucial in observing whether the highly infectious variant was passed on, he concluded. Leung pointed out one of the possible modes of transmission was the drainage system, especially if the building was aging. According to records, the palace residence on Pitt Street was built in 1966. The doctor also called on the governments to review quarantine exemptions granted to aircrew members. He suggested that all aircrew undergo at least 2 weeks of quarantine upon arrival. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
The city now has a total of 11 Omicron cases, after 2 more were added to the tally today. Both patients are cargo crew members who arrived this Wednesday through the same flight from the United Arab Emirates. One of them already tested positive for COVID that day, while the other was among 7 imported cases today. The case of the cargo pilots has intensified debate on whether they should enjoy quarantine exemptions. Public health expert Benjamin Callen gave his take on the matter, saying authorities can never get the risk down to 0, and it is unfair to ask pilots to not see their families for months. The debate over the effectiveness of Hong Kong's quarantine system was reignited after a cargo pilot was feared to have come down with the highly contagious Omicron variant. That led some experts to call on authorities to scrap quarantine exemptions for cargo aircrew, who can isolate at home even after returning from high-risk areas. But Hong Kong University public health professor Benjamin Cowling believes daily testing will be a better option.
I doubt that it would be sustainable to ask all of our pilots to just stay at the airport for the coming 6 months, the coming 12 months, and not see their families and not be able to ever get out of quarantine. So I think daily testing would probably be a better way to manage the risk. We can't ever get the risk all the way down to 0, but having something like daily testing of people that are doing home quarantine would make a lot of sense as a risk minimization measure.
The infectious disease expert also suggested building a facility to quarantine all overseas arrivals. That would eliminate the need to put inbound travelers in designated hotels, many of which are in densely populated areas. It would also provide an alternative to the unpopular Penny's Bay Quarantine Center.
I think a purpose-built facility would be a great addition for our city, maybe 30,000, 40,000, even 50,000 rooms. And if we have a facility like that, 14 days quarantine is definitely sufficient. There's no need for any longer than 14 days, and people can plan much better if they know there's going to be rooms available. Maybe we could imagine an on-arrival facility that has a range of price points. Maybe we have better Wi-Fi. Maybe we have food choices and on-site kitchens and so on to look after people better.
The epidemiologist also believes some forms of social distancing should remain to slow a possible spread of Omicron, even as Hong Kong's vaccination rate inches closer to 72%. You can watch the full interview on Talk the Walk tomorrow night at 8:30 on HKIBC. Police have arrested 2 men who allegedly called on others to kill police officers during Sunday's Legislative Council polls. Government officials, meanwhile, made a last-ditch push to drive up the turnout rate. Isaac Lee tells us more.
Chief Secretary John Lee inspected the central vote counting station at the Convention and Exhibition Centre this morning. He reminded workers to be fully prepared for Sunday, when 40,000 electoral staff will oversee the Legislative Council polls, the most in history. Fellow government ministers spared no effort boosting the turnout rates. Financial Chief Paul Chan distributed leaflets at the Brands and Products Expo yesterday, while Home Affairs Secretary Casper Cui even dressed up as a mock candidate as he visited different districts. The chiefs of Development, Environment, Transport and Housing, and Innovation and Technology bureaus went online to ask citizens to cast their ballots. Police, meanwhile, remain on high alert for potential acts of sabotage. In their latest operation, 2 men aged 22 and 34 were arrested for inciting others to join illegal assemblies and carry out arson on polling day. The pair, who did not know each other, allegedly made threats on social media to kill police officers and government officials. Imitation firearms and combat helmets were also seized from one of the suspects. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
A policy research institute revealed that less than half of the respondents in the rolling survey indicated they will cast ballots on Sunday.
I would say there's a big gap between what the government expects and what is being shown according to the poll results. I think the reasons are, number one, it is a very new electoral formula that people are still trying to figure out. And number two, after all, we are dealing with a change of the system which is less democratic than before.
The Hong Kong Public Opinion Research Institute interviewed 900 potential voters last week. Just 48% indicated that they must vote or will vote this Sunday, down 4% from the previous edition earlier this month. More than half felt that no candidates this year deserve their support. And coming up after the break. At least 24 people are dead after an alleged arson in the Japanese city of Osaka. And Britons beat the deadline to reach France before a travel ban kicks in this weekend.